I want to get on to disability benefits. There was a piece in today's Independent written by the journalist Alex Taylor. And Alex is a young ambassador for disability, as well as a journo. He's worked incredibly hard in this industry, has cerebral palsy, and clearly what is happening at the moment with the Department of Work and Pensions and Benefits is something that is going to have an effect on his life and his ability to lead his life in the way that he thought he was going to be able to lead his life, until suddenly Iain Duncan Smith and the Department of Work and Pensions came along and went, hang on a second, we've got a wholesale change of this and this and this. I have said for the last year or more, certainly, no, longer than that, but certainly we've ramped it up in the last year or more, that at the moment, considering there is the last time I looked, and maybe Alex can tell me more when we speak with him, there's been no overall impact assessment of cuts, or even if you want to be kind and say alterations or transitions to disability benefits. As far as I can work out, there have been none. And taking benefits from central government and palming it off to local government may on paper sound good, but if the budget isn't the same and it's not ring-fenced, then frankly, it's no good to anybody. And if you're disabled and you absolutely need to know what this is going to mean for you at the moment, your life's gone upside down unnecessarily, because until an impact assessment is done, it should clearly be, by anybody's stretch of the imagination, a total and unequivocal hands-off all alterations or reductions to disability benefit, because nobody knows where that one's going to go. We'll talk about that. I want to hear your stories as well. I want to get back to this issue of disability. So it's been an ongoing kind of, if you like, unofficial campaign that here on LBC I've been talking about the fact that the Department of Work and Pensions, as far as I can work out, have yet to do a proper thorough impact assessment on the removal, or even, to be generous, the alteration to disability benefit. And of course, if you are in a position where you're disabled and require some kind of welfare assistance, nobody anywhere is financially having it off royally with the country's money. I mean, these are payments that are crucial. They're payments that just about sometimes keep your head above water, but mostly very, very necessary. So to be told when your life may already have challenges surrounding it by definition, to then be told that in fact those challenges are about to get a whole bunch worse because we're either taking this away or we're going to merge it into something else, or we're going to let the local authority deal with it, even though they've got no obligation to ring fence it, or in fact even have the same amount of money to play with. All of these, if nothing else, these are huge worrying question marks. Alex Taylor is a journalist and young ambassador for disability. Good evening to you, Alex.
Hi, Ian. How are you doing?
Yeah, very well. And it was the piece that you wrote for The Independent today that got us back into wanting to talk about this. Explain then, if you would, it's hard to encapsulate the enormity of this story, clearly, because there's lots of different facets to it. But broadly speaking, what are the biggest concerns at the moment for people in receipt of disability benefits?
You see, as a young person who is looking for and has work, what I would like is the independence to live alone. And you see, for that, I have to have care. Mm-hmm. And with our budget, as we had in May, all of that has been cut back in terms of the council availability of the funding, and so that makes it harder to work and live a life as I would like to, as a young man.
And interestingly, so this is broadly, I mean, you have cerebral palsy, so this is something, so despite the fact that you get on with your life and you're a journalist and you're having success with that and that's working rather well, and you do everything that every other 25-year-old does, you go out with your mates, blah, 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 all of that. There are elements of your life where there's no getting away from it. You absolutely need care. You mention in your article that, nipping to the loo is something that, you require help with, things like that. And am I right in saying that it was the ILF, the Independent Living Fund, that was making that happen and possible? But that's where you understand the biggest axe is going to swing, because it's been taken from central government to local government, but it hasn't been ring-fenced, and it's not even the same amount of money anyway.
I've never actually been able to have all of the help in terms of having help.
So at the moment, how much help do you have, Alex?
Needed. With the toilet help, I've never had that help.
Even though you've needed it?
Exactly.
And so how many hours a week would you really need somebody for?
Well, this is actually where the issue is, that I would have to have help on call, as it were, because my life isn't on a timetable.
Sure.
And so if I'm offered 8 hours of care, well, that means I'd have to have help in the morning. I mean, if I have to work in the evening, I might have to work an extra hour.
Of course.
And then I'll be home after the time which I had allocated.
So you because of the definition, the type of job you do, which is the kind of job that we do here, it obviously makes things difficult. Just finally, Alex, what would you say to Iain Duncan Smith or the Department of Work and Pensions? What is the one message you would like to impart to that department?
I think all of them have to be aware that their actions have an impact on these people, which isn't only about what's on paper in terms of numbers. It actually impacts their daily lives and openings and their chances.
And the ability just to simply function as well as one can under those situations, I would assume. Alex, thank you so much for that. Thank you for coming on with us. Alex Taylor, he's a journalist and a young ambassador for disability. He's 25, has cerebral palsy, and life's clearly challenging in lots of ways, and his concern is that it's about to become even more challenging, and that roots back to the very first point I made on this. When you're talking about disability payments, by definition, because of the extraordinary amount of different scenarios, and as Alex there said, his situation will be different to somebody who lives down the road that may also have cerebral palsy. They may have some other issue that they're dealing with in terms of disability, but all those cases are different, which is why the impact assessment of disability cuts or transitions is so crucial. What has it meant to you as somebody who either requires a disability payment, whether you were getting the Independent Living Fund, which has been the initiative that has been there for a while and has been a huge assistance to disabled people managing their care costs and living independently, to the new personal independence payment, which many are suspicious won't go far enough, and it's not ring-fenced by the local authority anyway. What is your own experience of that? Also, if you're a carer for somebody, how does that pan out in terms of your own story and for those that you look after? In the interest of balance as well, and it's a curious question, but one I have to ask, I'd love to speak to somebody who can tell me the logic of these alterations, whether you speak politically or whether you speak as a commentator, whether you speak as a disabled person. Is there anyone that actually looks at this? I mean, if you're disabled and you're a Tory voter, bearing in mind this is coming in under the Tories, well, how do you square that circle? Just out of interest, is there anybody that's disabled that says, actually, this is a really good idea? This really works. The issue of disability benefits, this one is never far from the news radar. Anna is in Swiss Cottage. Anna, hello.
Oh, hey, Ian. Yes, I'm listening to your programme, and I just feel absolutely infuriated. I have cerebral palsy, use an electric wheelchair, and I have mental health condition, etc. Now, I do not like the idea of the council really commenting on disability benefits. I think they'll just make a complete and utter mess of it. I used to receive Independent Living Fund. I don't anymore. Obviously, that's coming to a close now. And who is going to be doing these impact assessments?
Sure.
The whole thing is a complete and utter.
And am I right in saying there hasn't been a full
disability
impact assessment on any of this yet?
No. But if you look at the organisation like Atos, that was a bit of a pig's ear, people not being properly qualified. Sure. I am an expert in my own disability.
Mm-hmm. Of course.
So I don't trust the council at all.
Why do you think they felt the need to make this this change from one type? I mean, they keep calling it a transition.
Oh, do you mean PIP?
Sorry?
Do you mean PIP?
Yes, indeed. When they decided to go from what was previously the independent, it was independent living allowance, wasn't it?
Yeah, there is one answer to that, and that is to save money, but at what cost?
Sure.
I mean, my life has become much more reduced since I've not been receiving independent living fund, and I find my life very difficult. I would like.
So you went from that to, so what's the difference in your payment then? Is it the amount?
It's the amount equals having much less hours.
Much less hours of care?
Of care, yes.
Okay. So what has that been reduced to and from?
Well, I used to receive 40 hours, and now I only receive 15 hours.
So it's a significant reduction.
So it's a significant reduction, and then I get the domino effect of my health. My health is actually deteriorating. I will say that LBC keeps me going.
Well, I'm glad to hear that much, Anna, but it doesn't, alter the fact that clearly
it doesn't alter
something here is, which to me just seems blindingly obvious, that if you make these alterations to a budget, then you make alterations to people's lives. Now, even if, let's be generous here and say that Iain Duncan Smith is not an evil man, but he's just a bit stupid.
What is wrong with you, Iain Duncan Smith? You're supposed to be a Christian man. You're supposed to be a member of Parliament. And you punished a girl with cerebral palsy and other conditions in an electronic wheelchair for not going to a job interview because she was unconscious. What is wrong with you, Iain Duncan Smith?
What do you
he might be a lot stupid.
If he was sitting here now, I can't imagine for 1 second he would just suddenly say, oh yes, I've made a terrible mistake. He would have, in his own words, an answer as to why he felt it was crucial to change from one to the other. What do you think he'd say?
I don't know what he would say, but he doesn't actually, he probably hasn't actually properly thought it through.
Okay. Anna, lovely to talk, and thank you for coming on with us. Appreciate that. This in from Kathy in York. The whole benefit system is over-complex, illogical, and should be streamlined properly into the 21st century. I spent 15 years in the Navy, was proud of the UK, but now it's a cold, cynical country. Thank you, Kathy, for that. This in from Anonymous, who says, I was on the sick and got thrown off it, and now I'm on job seekers allowance. I have a fractured hip, so really Iain Duncan Smith should be ashamed of himself. It's always the wrong people who suffer. But if we all agree that the benefit system as a whole needed refining, and refining doesn't always mean reducing, but refining, and there were clearly areas that were either inappropriate for the 21st century, there were areas that had never been looked at for years, and something needed to change. Even if we accept all of that, what I can't accept and won't accept is that this should ever have applied to disability benefit. And I know everybody's got a story of matey down the road who's not really got a bad back, but he said he had a bad back and he went to the doctors 150 years ago and he's received 200 quid a week ever since for disability when he's not really disabled and drives a cab in the evening and plays golf at the weekend. We all, those apocryphal stories. Some of them will be true. Some of them will be glaringly true and patently unfair. However, I don't believe for 1 second that Bad Back Bob, and I know such a person, defines accurately most people in receipt of any form of disability benefit. And until somebody can really put their finger on it, then nothing in the world of disability welfare should be touched until we know. And in the grander scale of how much money is actually saved, it doesn't go anywhere near the overall budget saving requirements of our government. If you think about the original payments, which were 300, and I think it was about 320 million was the last figure that I saw for how much money was spent in that one area, and that's to be reduced so that it can go to local authorities to decide, reduced by something like 70 million. I'll bring you I'll try and get the actual figures for that in a second, but it's of that order. Then 70 million in the grander scale set against the sort of money that is being spent. I mean, they're spending 7 million sending extra cops and supplying flights in Calais. Well, there's 7 million for a start. I reckon you could find all manner of pockets of money such as that within the Department of Welfare, within the overall government budget. Sylvia in Selby. Hi, Sylvia.
Hello, Ian.
Hiya.
Well, I don't agree with you in some circumstances when you said Bob's got a bad back and he's had it for about 10 years. Bob needs to get a job and get back on job seeking.
Oh, yes, I'm not defending Bob, by the way. I'm just saying that I don't think that most people who claim disability benefits are Bob.
Right, but I've listened to the lady that you've had on and the chat before, and they deserve every penny they are given in disability.
Yeah.
I've got a sister that was as fit as anything, and it attacked her immune system, and she's paralysed. And you could give her, if she could have her legs back and was able to get out of the door and work, she would do. But I'm afraid she's paralysed. So all the money that she were giving her, she'd rather have her health and be able to be fit and walk out of the door. But what I want to say is, I've watched a programme, and I'd say to Iain Duncan Smith, it's on Channel 5 and it's on Wednesday. And he's gone over all areas, Liverpool, Manchester. You go in a Monday in some of these pubs, they're telling him what to do. Say you've got a bad back, you can't walk, you're depressed, you've got anxiety. And to me, all this shower wants knocking off these disability benefits, and they need to be put on job seekers to get a job.
All right.
They've milked the system for years.
Words of wisdom from Sylvia in Selby. Thank you, Sylv. Do you concur with that? Do you have any sympathy with Iain Duncan Smith? I keep thinking that, like all areas of life, that you think, well, nobody would disagree with X, Y, and Z. Or agree with, but there must be law of averages. There must be some people out there that are looking at what Iain Duncan Smith and the Department of Work and Pensions are doing on this specific area of disability, and conclude that it is absolutely right. It is absolutely right. I'd be more than intrigued to speak with you if that's what you believe, and I'd just love to know why. Because at the moment, as far as I can see, there's no real impact assessment of what these cuts or alterations will do to people's lives. And when we're dealing with disability, that surely has to be paramount every single time. It's not just kind, it's right. There is, as you would imagine, a lot of comment on this area. What is happening at the Department of Work and Pensions? Is it a money-saving exercise? If you follow the philosophy of what they're supposedly trying to do at the Department of Work and Pensions, it is to enable people to live freer, more independent lives. However, case after case after case is telling us that that is clearly not happening. In fact, far from freeing people up and giving them more independence, it is, in fact, curtailing the little independence they currently have. So enough stories like that seem to suggest that this is a little more than just anecdotal, that in fact there is a wholesale issue surrounding this. Susie in Lewisham. Hi, Susie.
Oh, hello, Ian.
Hi.
I could hit up, like I've been listening, and a lot of people have been talking about physical disabilities, and of course I understand, and I mean that the last caller with her sister, that's an awful story, but no one can. I'm a young woman who has bipolar, and it's not very good at the moment. I barely get out. When I do get out, I might manage to sort of put my makeup on and stuff, and then I think everyone's looking at me and thinking, why isn't she at work? And like, I already am filled with anxiety, which can turn to paranoia. It's an achievement for me to get out.
Sure.
So, like, I feel like I would, like, if I could just be a normal person, not have this problem, not have to take medication that dehydrates me. Sometimes it's really hard to wake up, like, in the morning, and I've got children, and I have to, but my youngest isn't with me anymore, but that he's with his dad. My other one's 16, so it's kind of a little bit, I still have to be there for him. He's still vulnerable. He still needs me. He's, right, sorry, I'm a bit anxious.
That's all right, you're sounding fine, Susie.
I just wanted to say that, because you can't see mental health problem, it is there, and...
Is there the same requirement in terms of assistance you need with a psychological illness as there is with a physical one?
No, because, well, yeah, sometimes, not so much. I mean, I not like, I don't need what the lady and the gentleman that called up with cerebral palsy. I wouldn't need the independent living, but my mum does a lot for me. You know, she's nearly 66. She supports me a lot, and because of what happened with my son going to his father, that just knocked me, and I've gone into, like, I'm not as well as I was.
Sure.
I mean, I can be well, and then I wanted to do some volunteer work, and then, like, down at the British Heart, I don't know if I'm allowed to say things, and then I was thinking about it, and I went in there, and I was feeling good one day, and I was like, oh yeah, and I'll go and speak to my doctor, but it's obvious that I'm not going to be able to do that now, because I can't predict when I'm going to feel like I can get out, and I have to cancel appointments. But I don't know how to explain it, because I'm not feeling great at the moment. Kind of help? Maybe if I was feeling more well, I might be able to explain it better.
No, you're coming across fine, Susie. Well, I'm intrigued what sort of help you would like that you're currently not getting.
I'd like a lot. I mean, they're so stretched. Like, I see a mental health social worker, not very often. She's probably really stretched, and that's only because I was in crisis. So I won't be seeing her for much longer. To be honest, if I suddenly feel like, if I manage to get out, and sometimes I get the bus back and I'm okay, but sometimes I feel like I just feel scared. I'll get a cab, and I put that in my, my forms. They understand. Okay. I hope.
So it would be so that would be an example of where the cost of that cab you would need assistance with.
Yeah, but sometimes I get scared. I don't want to talk to the cab driver. Like, what are they, like? I'm scared. I don't know. They're going to ask me questions. So then I have to call on my mum, right. And then sometimes she can't be there, and. Yeah. It's just been a really hard time since July. I had faced a massive amount of discrimination and prejudice and blatant discrimination. I was actually doing really well until I lost custody of my son, my youngest son. So I kind of got into a depression. But what I'm trying to say is that, like, probably if someone saw me walking down the street, well, they might see me and I might look a bit weird. I might be mumbling or something, but sometimes I'm not. Sometimes I just probably look really normal, and they probably think, oh, that woman's a waste of space. Why is she not at work? I had so many opportunities when I was younger, and I had, like, some really good little jobs and some courses I was on and opportunities, and unfortunately I got ill and they went, and I do want to work. I really aspire to work. I really want a career. I wanted to be a psychotherapist. I'd seen enough of them, and things, and, like, work with children. And
well, there's no listen, Susie, I'm going to move on just to get some more comment on, but as you will be aware through your own difficulties and the reading of other people's difficulties, what seems insurmountable at a certain time in your life and a hill that could never be climbed, eventually that changes and you do find yourself coming out on the other side. And of course it's a long journey. You know that better than I know it, but I think the important headline of all of these things is that it's not an impossible journey, even if it feels like that sometimes. So I wish you luck with all of that. It sounds like you've clearly got some hurdles to get over on this one, but I'm sure with the right determination and the right help, which of course is why she was calling, you will do it. Matt is in Reading. Matt runs the Reading branch of the Iain Duncan Smith fan club, as I remember, Matt, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah. How many members have you got these days?
Oh, several 100,000. I
think.
There's just a couple of things, Ian. The first one was I just tuned in maybe 15 minutes into the show. I got the impression that you're getting Independent Living Fund and Disability Living Allowance confused a bit. And I just wanted to clarify it.
Put me right on what I said.
The Disability Living Allowance has been around since the 90s, and it's split into two components, care component and mobility component, and each one has 3 levels. If you're in the top level for both, then you're very profoundly disabled and you need overnight care.
Mm-hmm.
That's been replaced with PIP,
which
is in theory run along similar lines, but the assessment criteria are much more stringent.
Yes.
The Independent Living Fund was a separate pot of money, which was designed. I think it worked in the sense that it made up any shortfall in care costs. So if your DLA didn't cover having care workers and nurses and all the rest of it, then the Independent Living Fund would contribute to that.
Yeah, that was in fact what we were talking about, not the disability living allowance.
That's it. I mean, I think that's been cut, and that money is being fed at a reduced rate to local councils.
It's gone from 320 million to they've taken 60 million decrease, and it's gone to local councils, and it's not ring fenced. So,
which means that any council that feels that they have, for the greater good, they have services that they feel they deserve that money more.
Well, they've already had a 1.1 billion pound cut in social care, so.
Yeah,
you're right. They've got no obligation to specifically send that money to where it previously went.
Absolutely. So people who are in the top rate of DLA and who are now going to be on the top rate of PIP are now going to be completely dependent on PIP to cover any care costs. And of course, that's accounting for the fact that they may not get any help from what was the Independent Living Fund anymore.
But in theory, the local authority could still give the person whatever they were getting before,
and I'm sure some will, but there will be others that will have, and I put it in big quotes, other priorities, and there's nothing that anybody can do to argue with that because it's not protected money.
What is so if you were forced, Matt, as an intelligent bloke, to look at what you think is behind all of this? And I've always thought that many people from the who try to highlight disability claims, and the reason I always, and we've talked about this before, the whole, is Iain Duncan Smith evil or stupid and all the rest of it, and I often think that sometimes the campaigns to highlight these causes do themselves a little bit of a disservice by just simply caricaturing Iain Duncan Smith as a man who eats disabled people for breakfast because he just doesn't like them. I mean, that I don't think advances the cause. So I'm trying to intellectually understand why somebody like Iain Duncan Smith, who spent years and years studying the entire benefit system, is probably more geared up on welfare, not necessarily as geared up as many, but more geared up than many of his peers have ever been in that job. What do you think he's thinking? Because he's clearly got this wrong.
Let me just two little things then about that. First of all, I just tweeted you an article that I've just spotted about the speech he's going to give tomorrow.
Go on.
In that he wants a massive overhaul of ESA now as well, which is the Employment and Support Allowance.
Yep.
This is in addition to the announcements of Osborne in July budget. So he's going to do that. You might have a read of that. It's very interesting.
Okay.
But the second thing is the problem that you have is that, say, I'm blind. I'm not stupid, as you said. I'm quite an intelligent person. I know some blind people. I know a particular blind person who's actually quite high up in his own department, and it's I think I might have explained to you that I've been through this process recently, and I got found as capable. And now the problem is, a lot of the system is down to who you deal with, because one person I spoke to said to me, and obviously I'm paraphrasing, but well, let's face it, there's a blind person working on the floor above me, so we know you can work. Right. So I think it's about time you got your act together. And this is the attitude of a lot of people who work at the DWP, is that they've seen a blind person working in Barclays, or they've seen a blind person working in the DWP doing some sort of admin job. And that means, therefore, that all blind people and all disabled people can work. And this is the problem. Yes, given the right set of circumstances, blind people can work. But I've said this to you before on several occasions, the workplace has to be geared up for it.
So, and that could be at a huge cost to employers, as you pointed out before. Matt, as always, you always shine some fabulous light on these things. I'll look out for that story as well. Thank you, Matt in Reading, with his insightful interpretation of what is happening out there, and he's usually spot on with these things. Pete's in Romford. Hello, Pete.
Good evening.
Good evening. What are your thoughts?
I've always wanted to say this, so I'm going to say this. Long-time listener, first-time caller, so bear with me, I'm a bit nervous.
Yeah, you've ticked every box there, haven't you? So.
Excellent.
Nice to have you with us, Pete.
Thank you. I just wanted to bring up, I hear in all these genuine people how they really need help and the money. But I just want to bring up something where I've known over the last few years that the government actually pay out methadone users disability allowance, which I think is crazy because they're able to work, but just because they're on methadone, they're entitled to disability allowance, which I think is really bang out of order when there's loads of people out there that actually need the help, but they're just not getting the money, but this drug users do get it.
So that's interesting. So yes, so you're saying that if you're a registered drug user, then it's possible, but not always probable, but possible you can become a disabled recipient of
welfare.
Claim
disability allowance, yeah, because they claim that they can't work due to taking methadone, which makes them unable to work.
So that would be a no-no to you, would it, Pete?
I think it's wrong because they are able to work. Okay, they're on drugs, they're trying to get off drugs, but that's down to their own fault. It's not like a disability where if you're blind or...
But what if you've got so far into the whole drug thing that you can't stop? I know it's hard to sympathise.
But then they still get housing benefit and job seekers allowance because they should still be looking for work. I understand that they're on drugs for a long time, but they're still able to work. It may not be operating machinery and stuff like that, but they're still able to do labour work or any other type of work. I don't understand why they're entitled to disability allowance when there's other people that are more in need of it that ain't getting disability allowance.
So it's those... Yeah, I mean, I think if you would put that to the public and say, anyone who's a smackhead shouldn't be getting the cash, most people probably support that, rightly or wrongly.
Yeah, and that's just the point I really want to make, is that the government should really snap down. Okay, there's people, I understand if they're on it for 10, 15 years, all right, there may be some exceptions, but people that have been on it for a year or two and are just abusing the system, I think that's bang out of order. I think there should be more...
listen, Pete, we're going to move on just to get some more calls on, but great first call. Make sure you call again as well. Thank you. I don't think anybody would disagree with what Pete just said. That, on the face of it, makes sense, but I'm not sure whether, if you were to say, right, we're going to be a little more, not necessarily brutal, but just a bit more analytical about certain people's conditions, then maybe there'd be something in that. But as far as I know, the Department of Work and Pensions haven't done that. They've not set out and done a full impact assessment on where disability cuts are going to go. And even if they had have done, the kind of cuts we're talking about at the moment, that we've just been discussing, and with Alex, our guest, a little earlier, wouldn't even touch that anyway. They wouldn't be about that element. It's just slightly bamboozling to wonder why in a world where people are already experiencing, by definition of their disability, day-to-day challenges, why you would wish to make that even more challenging. You can't lob 60 million quid off a budget and put it into a no ring-fence pot into the local authority and expect there to be no impact of that. There's clearly going to be an impact. And if you consider the amount of money that is spent, and I know it's easy to throw out some targets, foreign aid money, overseas aid budget, money for Calais that we were talking about last week, there's just a plethora of areas that you could look at in the government. I reckon you could find that 60 million quid from somewhere. I don't think it would take much to do that. So there must be, as far as I can see, another reason behind it. So either we're all being naive and lots of people are genuinely having it off royally with disability money when they don't really need it, which I don't believe, or there's some other reason. Mark's in Milton Keynes. Hello, Mark.
Hi, Ian.
Hi, Mark. What are your thoughts on this?
It's all right. You just gave me another thought. You're saying about the various 60 million.
Yeah.
I can find you 60 billion. Easy.
Can you?
It's got. I'm just to put the numbers in perspective for people. 60 million is nothing in the grand scheme of things.
Sure.
I understand 262 million, which I think is the Independent Living Fund, but I could have it confused.
Okay.
Is basically the money that's being played around with. I think you said it was 320 million, and then there was 60 million taken off it, or something like that.
Yeah, as far as I understand, yes. As far as I understand, if we're looking at the correct figures, the Independent Living Fund was a £320 million initiative that is being reduced by 60 million.
Yeah. And that's going to be sloshed around to the council.
Correct. So that could
no ring fence.
No, the council don't have to give that money where it previously went.
No, and it's like the crisis loan system. So if you, me, or anyone listening, I don't know, their house fell down or something like that, or the cooker exploded or something.
Sure.
There was a fund where you could borrow the money and you paid it back. And when the money was distributed to the councils, it just suddenly vanished. Unless some of the councils still, most of them, it's all gone. It vanished. And it was supposed to be a rolling pot.
So what is behind this? What do you think is behind these kind of alterations? What would be the reasons? And let's accept that the government aren't doing it because they don't like disabled people.
I'd put it in a headline. It's the cruel face of austerity. That's what it is. This is, this government, that have been elected believe in business. They don't really care about.
No, but you see, that's the struggle I have. I can't believe that there are 30 men and women sitting around a table when they have their meetings. They go, disabled? We don't care about those.
But there's, at the same time, I'm referring to a story. It's over a month old now. The 93 billion of corporate welfare. That's 93 billion that doesn't need to be given away to companies that don't pay any tax and then get grants. It's sort of the amount that we're saying about with the disabled. We can find it. We can find a lot more than that. It's down to the implications.
I agree. I think money can be found, but there's clearly at the moment a desire to continue down this path. And yes, there is the austerity aspect, but austerity can, I'd rather pay a penny more tax myself than see disability money going AWOL. And even if you consider, even if you consider, Jeremy Corbyn may become the leader of the opposition. He might become the Prime Minister, in which case all of this gets reversed. But if Andy Burnham or Yvette Cooper becomes the leader of the opposition and then the Prime Minister, then those guys are also signed up to similar pledges of austerity.
Yeah, well, that's why Corbyn suddenly becomes so popular as well.
Yeah, indeed. But that would say to me...
the other direction, the anti-austerity.
But I can't also believe that in addition to David Cameron, George Osborne and Ian Duncan Smith, that Yvette Cooper and Andy Burnham also hate disabled people. I can't believe that either.
But they're pro-business.
You can be both. You can be pro-business and still have a conscience, which is why I wonder whether there's another reason behind this.
But what seems to happen, and I'm putting this in crude terms, but it's robbing from the poor to give to the rich, and it's got completely out of hand.
But I'm not sure whether that. That's
we're going back to pre-Victorian times.
It's a very seductive way of putting it, but I'm not sure that's exactly what's going on. Yes, modern Western governments do throw tax breaks and all manner of other incentives to big business, not because they're their mates, but because that's how our economy functions, and it may seem unfair when you look at the headline.
But the thing is, the Conservatives, just going further afield, in a way, is they're what's it called? Capitalism. But the thing is, at the same time, they're giving out socialist subsidies.
But that's not a.
It isn't pure capitalism.
It's probably not even pure conservatism either, which is an even more interesting subject, which we could talk about another time. Mark, we're hit by the clock, but great call. Thank you. Marie, as always, some fascinating, compelling and really interesting calls in that. Thank you, and sorry if you didn't get on.